Hi, David.
So let's speak a little bit about Brave New World. You play Bernard, and it's a character who has everything apparently, but he's somehow unhappy. Why do you think it is?
Yes, he is someone who should be happy. In this society, everyone is happy. They've solved the happiness problem. Everyone is stable. They like what they have. They don't need anything else. They're distracted by sex and drugs and entertainment. So what's the problem? Bernard is an alpha plus. He's the highest kind of status citizen that you can get. But yeah, he's not happy. And he and Lenina seem to be the only two people who don't seem to fit this perfect society. And I don't know why exactly. And you find out that he's, for the last few weeks, months, he has been offline. He's been spending time on his own. He's been thinking his own independent thoughts and not been helping the social body. I remember about halfway through filming, I had an idea that I texted to David, the creator, the showrunner, that in a way, it feels like Bernard is actually a beta. He's the perfect beta. He'd be a very good serving the alphas, but he's been categorized as an alpha plus, which means he always feels insufficient. But maybe he was just mislabeled. In the book, it was to do with his embryo had potentially was alcohol poisoning when he was a bit shorter in the book. In R1, there's nothing physically seemingly wrong with him. But yeah, he's just it doesn't quite connect when everyone else connects. So yeah, but it's it's not entirely clear why he doesn't fit, and that's part of the journey that we go on.
Do you think that the story presents a society that we are kind of heading to?
Well, I don't think we're ever going to go that far, but there are parts of it that already we recognize. I mean, the constant distractions and the big difference, one of the big difference between the book and R1 is the concept of Indra, which is the kind of the Google eyepieces. Everyone has these contact lenses and can feed into everyone else's feed. And I can see what you see and we're all connected literally. And I have Google in my brain. And that idea that you see people, even in that first episode, Bernard is sitting on the train, he's looking at stuff, he swipes away stuff. We see adverts that kind of, when you watch it in America, if you watched it with ad breaks, which on certain formats you could, the real adverts suddenly blend into adverts from Brave New World. And you don't realize that suddenly you were watching an advert for Pepsi and then it's an advert for the Savage Lands. And they deliberately kind of messed with the audience in that way to remind you that it's not so different. And that we are, rather than sitting there and thinking for those 10 seconds at the bus stop, I'd rather look at something and just be distracted and therefore deliberately stay unconscious to a certain extent. That is something that I definitely connected to.
You were speaking before about the difference of the character between the book and the show. Did you document yourself by reading the book, or did you get ready?
Yeah, I'd never read the book before, and I felt guilty. I feel like this is bad. I should have read it. I studied English literature at university. I should have read this book. It's not very big. But I hadn't. I didn't know anything about it. But I read the scripts, the first two scripts, and I thought, this is fantastic. And I don't know how much of this is from the book and how much is modern. It feels very modern and feels very different to other stuff. And I couldn't picture it as how do you shoot this? I can't see it in my head. So I was really curious. And then once I had the part, I went and read the book, and it was really helpful. But I also realized what had to change and what had already kind of changed. The book was super useful to set out the rules of the society. In that way, the alphas, the betas, how it works, but the story and actually the detail of the character of Bernard is much more nuanced in our version, and the story is an emotional kind of story, whereas in the book it's almost like an essay. It's a short story about a society, a moment in time, and it's an allegory. There are moral lessons and everything kind of gets wrapped up in the end, but the characters aren't driving it, and we don't really get inside the head of anyone, whereas we definitely do. So I think it's a really good marriage of the two.
as you said, the series is really visual. You have lots of effects, lots of futuristic aesthetics, and also lots of long shots. How was filming them?
Well, yeah, you know what? One of the early things that included all those things you just mentioned, the big shots, the amazing sets, the stupid visual effects. Do you remember right at the beginning when Lenina walks out of the laboratory and it's a single shot taking her into the lift? She goes up the lift, across, up, down the corridor, and then into my office. Yeah. I'm sitting in my office waiting, and I can hear them call action, and they're over there following her into this lift, which is not actually moving, but and I've got to wait for a minute or two, and I can hear her coming down my corridor, and the camera's there. I've got an AD, an assistant director's in the room with me, showing me on his iPad what the camera live is seeing. And in the background, I can already see the special effects of the city live as they're filming it. They've already animated the whole of New London and have set it up to fit in with the screens, the blue screens in the background. So as she's literally in the elevator, I'm seeing her cross over New London, coming up there, coming down the corridor. They filled in all the futuristic background. The guy hurries off, and then she walks in, and I'm like, shit, what's my line? I was so distracted. But it was amazing. It was like, yeah, the technology was very impressive.
Like Indra. And you also filmed in Valencia, if I'm right, or you didn't?
I did like 6 hours in Valencia. It was amazing. Wow. You know, in that incredible complex, which they use for lots of futuristic stuff. They just wanted to have some exterior shots, especially in that first episode, to see something, a grand exterior scale, to imagine what the city looks like. So we waited until, even though we shot the first episode in July last year, we had to wait until October, I think, for the tourists. And I was filming in London on Friday, I think Thursday and Saturday. So I flew to Spain Thursday night, got in at midnight, filmed at like 5 a.m. on the Friday morning. And then at 2 o'clock, I had to drive to Alicante airport to get back on a flight to get home for Friday night. And then Saturday morning, I was shooting again in London. So it was a whirlwind, but I'd been to Valencia once before for the Fallas about 10 years ago. So this was I was like, I didn't even recognize the city. I was in the old city before, and it was fireworks and it was great. And now I was in this like modern, I don't even know what, it felt like the skeleton of a whale, but like a futuristic whale. I was amazed, but it was so fast. I didn't get a chance to do anything.
You also have a partner in this show who probably helps in this trip that we were speaking about with Bernard, Jessica Brown. How was filming with her?
Yeah, Jessie Brown Finley is a brilliant person. I knew her a little bit before, and yeah, she's a great co-pilot. But anytime I got scenes with her, we throw it around. We both work in a similar way. And, you know, most of the time we were filming in Cardiff in Wales, and we were all in the same hotel. So if you got a scene the next day, you'd meet up in the hotel, you'd go over your lines, and Alden was around. So it was all very collaborative and nice. And yeah, but us three, me and Alden and Jessie, I suppose, had the most to do together. And no, actually, we became really close. It was a really nice family feel for something that was so big. And sometimes stuff like that, individuals, you get a bit lost and you try and fight your corner because the dates are changing. But actually, no, we stayed pretty tight throughout the whole thing.
Let me ask you, what would you choose, living in New London or the Savage Lands?
Yeah, tricky. I always think that I would love to have a holiday in New London. I think it would be great for like a weekend or a month of, you know, the parties and all the drugs, and it'd be great. But I think after that, the fact that you're not allowed to spend time on your own, I think would really get to me. And always having to be up, and it would be like being at a premiere for, you know, 5 days. You know, a premiere can be fun for an evening, but you don't, you know, when you go home, you're quite happy to go home. Do you know what I mean? So I think for a long-term life, I might have to go to the Savage Lands.
Is it easy? I mean, you have some experience with this. Is it easy to be in a show based on a really famous book with lots of fan base? Because the expectations are always high.
Sure. Yeah, to be honest, it's not like I prefer doing it, but the good thing is that you have a lot of source material. Sometimes you read a script, I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. But if you're doing Game of Thrones or a Dickens adaptation or Brave New World? Well, it's pretty obvious first thing you do is you read the book. And that will pose questions and challenge stuff. And then you're you've got a way in at least. And sometimes I remember I learned on Game of Thrones a really good lesson early on. That when we shot the pilot, I had the book with me. It was like under my throne at the wedding. I was checking stuff. What's he eating? Oh, it turns out he eats this thing. Can we get this thing? Then it'll be like the book and the fans will love it. And it was too, then it can't breathe and actually make sense for what you're doing in the time. So by the time we then came to film the rest of the series, I kind of threw the book away. And I realized in Game of Thrones, at least, my character's only ever seen through the person who narrates all his chapters, which is his sister, who hates him. So actually, hold on a second, I need to rewrite this book. I'm the main part. And actually, she is this ridiculous person who doesn't understand. And you do research from the later books and you find out about what they've been doing previous to the book. And you rewrite the story where you're at the middle of it. And then it made more sense to me. I was like, well, this guy, he's the main part and no one understands. And that's really annoying. And I kind of agree with him. And then you're there, rather than looking at it from the distance. With Brave New World, again, I read it and I loved it and I took everything from it, but then we put it away. I didn't rely on that to help me into Bernard's state of mind, because for that, I felt it wasn't really inside him in the way that actually we wanted to get. So again, quite often you take everything and then you put it away.
And from the other side, because for example, Brave New World has been waited for many people has been waiting for this book to become a show or a movie. On this side, is it also complicated to have this reference? Well,
I have to say, there's a reason why I don't think there's been a real out-and-out benchmark adaptation, which everyone's like, oh, that's the one. Everyone knows Pride and Prejudice. They've done a really good job on that in 1990, whatever, and they're a definitive thing. Something's got to shift, because the book is not actually a satisfying, emotionally cathartic narrative, as it were. Like I said, it's kind of an essay. So if you try and do the book perfectly and did it scene for scene, word for word, I don't think it would at all translate for screen. I think it would be quite dull and cerebral and confusing. But that's what I loved about this. What David Weiner did is take that world and to find the emotional story that still supports the same philosophy, but allows it to be engaging in a 9-episode TV structure that we're also familiar with. Every episode's got to have a cliffhanger, all the stuff the ingredients that we need as a TV audience. We're so used to it, but we want it to be surprising, but I also want it to be a familiar kind of format. And it does that. I think the arc is really clear and does have the first kind of 3 episodes as the beginning, and then by 4 a new thing starts, and then by about 7, 8, 9, something, it feels like a 9-hour movie, which I think the best TV series kind of do. Mm-hmm. So the fact that people are excited about it, to just get them into the first episode, I think is great, because then I think that we'll take them on somewhere that, even if you've read the book, you're not going to be, okay, yeah. You're going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think that's the noise we want people to make.
Is there any news about a possible season 2?
Yes, we are waiting to hear any second. I know that they have started writing it. We're waiting to hear from the network if they're going to do it next year. Everyone that I've spoken to is very keen. And so fingers crossed, yes. But I don't know for sure.
And if it's not, do you think that people will be as happy with this ending as with the Game of Thrones one?
Well, hopefully they'll be happier than the Game of Thrones ending. Well, the thing is with this is that this kind of, even though by the end it's not exactly the same ending as the book, but it does. There is a climax. The story does kind of round off. It opens up a whole bunch of new doors. But it means that season 2, if we do it, we would be beyond the book, clearly. I mean, even though season 1 does also stretch it, it is the similar kind of premise. Season 2, and actually I'm talking to David in a day or 2, he's going to kind of tell me the ideas I think that they're working on. But you can there's lots of places we can go. And even though, again, there'll be certain elements from the book, the story is completely fresh. We've covered all those points. So hopefully we get to do that.
hopefully. Thank you very much, and good luck with the reception in Spain as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Have a nice day.
I like your Penelope Cruz poster.
Oh, thank you.